Gallery in Manchester, Vermont, standing in front of our art wall, one of two, which is part of our newest exhibition opening today virtually, titled Balancing Act. I've had the opportunity to come up with a concept and curate a show here at Ellenbogen Gallery, and I've chosen to work with the theme balance, as you can probably guess from the title. So just a little bit about the structure of this live video, as normally we would have a more traditional opening where we would invite people to come join us in the gallery, and we would be able to host conversations and answer questions. But since we can't do that today, I figured we would come to you live and I would talk you through some pieces going on in the show, talk about some of the conversations that working with this theme has led to, and hopefully engage with some of you today via Facebook through the comments. Hopefully this is working, and hopefully there are no technical difficulties. This is our first time doing a live tour like this, so bear with us if some things don't work exactly as we initially planned. I've got my phone with me. I'm going to join on to the live video right now myself, so I can answer any questions that might pop up. I believe oh, here we go. It's kind of funny, I'm watching myself live, hearing it twice, so I'm going to turn my volume down. But any questions asked by anyone via the comments, I'll be able to respond to, react to, so feel free if something comes up that you'd like to inquire about, or just a point you'd like me to share with everyone else watching. Just a reminder, the gallery is not open to the general public, but we have set up the show specifically to be viewed from the window. So I encourage anyone who is in driving distance, if you're up for a ride and want to get out of the house, to come by and check out the show from the windows. We've got two large windows at the front of the gallery that you can see the entire show from. We've also got it all posted online on our website, via Instagram, via Facebook. There's an online catalog, as well as options to buy. If you cannot access the website or Instagram or Facebook, we also take email inquiries. If you'd like any more information about particular pieces, details on artists, or details about the gallery in general, please feel free to reach out. And if you're joining us on Facebook, all of the details with website, email, social media, etc. should be available to you on our Facebook page, which is how you're watching this live feed anyway. So let's get started. So when I initially came up with the concept of balance, how that came about, just a little bit of a background, is I had a walk around the gallery space and I was thinking about all the different artists that we've got here at Ellenbogen Gallery, and I was thinking about a way to bring art together that maybe traditionally wouldn't be shown together. I was trying to think of a concept that would unite pieces beyond the obvious. You know, it's abstract, it's non-representational, it's contemporary art. Those are all excellent ways to group and categorize art, but something that was overwhelming for me the longer I thought about it, I guess, was the concept of balance. Balance, or in some cases, lack of balance. And that, to me, really sparked interest in ways that lots of artists use, don't use, intentionally, unintentionally, etc., approach that topic. It was something that I felt I could really explore. So I've got with you here this first half of the art wall. Maybe we'll give a little bit of a pan over of the wall in general. So you can see there's a great variety of works. We've got photography, we've got sculpture, we've got painting and acrylic and oil, some mixed media work. We've really brought together a nice collection of pieces in order to make this show and really prove the point that balance runs through. It is the common thread in contemporary art, in abstract art, in non-representational art, and it's something that could change the way you approach a piece. So to give you some specifics, to think about some examples and why I've chosen these pieces as part of the show, I'm going to talk you through a selection of art, one from each artist. We've got 11 artists in this show. And I will share with you, in some cases, my opinion, my insight, which I would love to hear some responses or some questions based off things I say, as well as some responses I've got from the artists themselves who either cannot be with us here today in the gallery, obviously, or engage with us live on Facebook. So I will be sharing some of their insights with you in order to help give a better idea of the way artists approach their practice, how they arrive at their outcome, or really if they even think about balance at all. So to start, I'd like to look at this one piece here. It's by James Vogler called In Between. When I think of James' work right off the bat, it's a lot of chaos. It's movement, it's characters working themselves, doing, whatever they're doing on the canvas. It's definitely your eye doesn't know where to settle. And that's the point. I would just like to share with you a quote that James shared with me about his work in general. I never consciously think of creating balance in a work. I'm just not comfortable with a calm or balanced feeling in the work. Something has to jump out for me. So as you can tell, the way he practices, the way he uses the brush, the way he uses pastel, the way he uses his materials, he's creating chaos, and for him, that is what balance is. Something interesting that I thought of once I read what he had to say, which actually will lead me into what Richard Weis has to say about balance, is that I would define it, especially in art, as the relationship between two elements. So it is not a singular thing. It is, for me, defined by the relationship. So for James in his canvases, it's the relationship between opposing shapes, contrasting colors, and line. So moving into Richard Weis's work, which I've got right here, called Contrapunctious. I might have pronounced that wrong. Richard, please let me know if I have. I can correct it. You can message me in the comments and I'll change it. But when Richard explained balance to me, he said that a better word would be resolution. And that was really powerful to hear, because I agree. It's the resolution of opposing forces somehow merging on the canvas, creating an outcome. This is the resolution. Moving on to Harry Rich's work, Under and Over, which was used as the kind of title image, I guess you can call it, for all things balancing act promoted via social media, on the flyer and catalog, etc. This piece stood out to me in particular because in a lot of ways it's incredibly balanced, incredibly symmetrical, but it's also not at the same time. And Harry's one of those painters who builds and builds and builds on his canvases. He does not just paint once and he's done. He does not do that. He will paint again and again and again until he feels like it's reached a point where it can be shown. In this piece, there are equal but opposite forces happening with choice of color, with light and dark, and with shape. So the longer you look at this piece, the balance almost devolves, it almost dissipates. You might see it from far away and think one thing, and the closer you get to it, the longer you look at it, it starts almost playing tricks in your mind. So I felt that this was a really powerful piece to explore the relationship between balance and art, the way we almost want to add balance into art. We almost want to see this as a perfectly symmetrical piece, and then the longer we look, the piece speaks for itself. Moving on to some photography. Right here we've got a piece titled Staples by Michael Ellenbogen, who is one of the co-directors at Ellenbogen Gallery. And Michael uses photography in a really interesting way. And this piece stood out to me when I think about balance, because you've got equal and opposite forces at work at the same time. You've got almost equal representation of light and dark working together on the canvas, or yes, well, it's printed on canvas, but it is a photograph. But it almost looks as they're preparing for battle. It almost looks like the forces are about to attack. And if you were to take this same photograph 20 minutes later, let's say, the balance or the compositional balance or the maybe emotional balance felt by the viewer may be completely disturbed. So to me, photography is very powerful because it captures something in the moment. And when you're photographing nature or something that could easily change in the next several minutes, you really have to get lucky. I think that that's fascinating. Moving on to one of our sculptures, I've got a piece here by Gregory Smith. It's titled At Your Own Risk, and I hope you can tell from the video right now what this is. You might be looking at it and think it's just a strange collection of shapes and some bars stuck together, but when I first saw this, I thought it was a chair. I'm not 100% sure if it was ever meant to be a chair, but that's how I'm seeing it. It looks like a bar stool. Disturbed enough that the balance actually no longer exists. Obviously it's standing, so to some degree it's still balanced, but one element, this one leg, has been altered just enough to disrupt the balance. So you could not actually use it as a chair, therefore changing its function altogether, redefining what it is. Its purpose now no longer can be because the balance is off. I'm just going to check in on Facebook to see if there are any comments or anything that anyone wants to add or participate. We're going to move on to our second art wall in a second. So if anyone has any thoughts that they'd like to share at this point, or any questions about any of the pieces on this wall that I haven't talked about, please feel free to let me know. I think we'll move on to the second art wall, and we can always come back if anyone has any lingering questions, if anyone's just joining us now. I'm here live at Ellenbogen Gallery at our mock opening, or virtual opening, I guess you could call it. The gallery is not open to the public, unfortunately, at this time. However, we have deliberately placed everything in the show on two partition walls that face outwards, so you can come, drive by. If you want to stay in your car, that's fine. If you want to get out and wait on the sidewalk, that's okay too. You can come have a look at the show. It's titled Balancing Act, where we're really trying to explore the variety of meaning, the variety of weight that the word balance can have among lots of different kinds of art. And I think there is a misconception when you say, oh, it's abstract art, it's non-representational art. As you can see, just from doing a quick pan over any of these pieces, they don't all look the same, but they all fall under those categories. So something that really threads them together is the idea of balance. It's something that exists, we know it exists because we can understand the fact that we're not falling over on the ground when we're standing up. We have balance in our own lives. I think we aim to achieve balance in our relationships, in the way we word things. I think we always aim for balance, and sometimes artists aim for balance intentionally, sometimes they find it by accident, or sometimes they avoid it completely. So moving on to our second art wall, maybe we can get just a scan of the wall just to see. We've got some similar artists being shown again over here. We've also got some new artists as well. So something that I want to accomplish in this section is I'm going to really go through the final 6 artists of Balancing Act who are participating, and I will definitely be answering and engaging with any comments or questions brought out by any of the artists themselves who are hopefully joining us live right now, or any questions by any audience member about how to view the show, where to find stuff online, or just any questions in general about the concept, about a piece, about an artist. Let me know. Would love to engage with you, as we can't be having these normal conversations as we would normally do. These are really unprecedented times, but we are making it work. So thank you all to anyone joining us live right now. So moving on with our little exploration of particular pieces to highlight, this piece right here is by Longina, Smolinski. It is called What Makes You Happy? Just looking at it for a second, it has a figurative element. It's abstract, it's non-representational, but to me, I see a shape, I see a person. I see a person almost sitting with their knee popped up, relaxing. What's interesting is after having a discussion with Longina about these pieces and understanding a little bit more about her practice, I'm pretty sure these are colorful rocks. So it's kind of funny that I added a figure into this. But when I think about balance in a piece like this, it might not be the first thing that comes to your mind. But I see it as all of these separate components, segmented off by black paint, are balanced together in a certain way that the structure holds its own in the midst of a canvas with lots of other elements going on. So as you can see, detail-wise, there are lots of different textures, there's lots of different layers and lots of different colors happening behind this structure that is on its own balanced. Moving on to Dublin, Durller-Wilson, this piece is titled Mirage. I mean, it speaks for itself in a lot of ways. As opposed to Longina's piece before, it's pretty obvious why I would consider this piece quote-unquote balanced, or why I would say that it explores the idea of balance in abstract art. The horizon line really defines this piece and the subject matter. It becomes the subject. While we don't have much else to work with besides the horizon line, I think the point is just that this piece, you're meant to be grounded when you look at it. It's meant to bring you balance. So there's a relationship between us and the art we view, and we cannot help but project our own feelings into what we're seeing, and that changes it for us. When I had a discussion with Dublin about her work and about this piece in particular and this series, I kind of came to the realization that she almost didn't realize how calming her pieces were, but she felt it was just a reflection of how she was feeling when she created it. She told me she needed to create this series. I think it's very visually strong, but I also think you can step right here in front of this piece and almost ignore the storm of the world that's going on around us. So quite fitting for a time like this to have a little bit of calm in some artwork. Moving on to this piece by Carolina Ellenbogen, who is also a co-director here at Ellenbogen Gallery. It's titled Constellations. Carolina works with light as her subject. She uses light to break up the darkness of the canvas, and in a similar way to her husband Michael, there are equal and opposite forces at work here on this canvas. The small marks that are scattered throughout almost create some sort of pattern. While it's not completely symmetrical and it's not actually repeated, you may look at this a few times and not realize that. It might take a little bit longer of an examination to look at the way she's playing with different depths of silver paint, which really creates a 3D effect. And looking at this piece, it looks as though it expands beyond what we're seeing here on the canvas. This is just one small part. So it's not contained on the canvas, which means it's almost impossible to identify the balance because what we're seeing is only a small part of the bigger picture. We've got a small watercolor here from Reg Darling, and this one is titled 10/06/2019. Reg had, he challenged himself to create a watercolor painting, small sketch, small painting every day. He did this for a few years, and this piece was completed in October of last year. What's really strong to me about this piece is there's a lot of movement, and it actually really correlates to the way Reg described balance when we asked him. He says balance is neither still nor instantaneous, it is a process and not a state. So to me, he is completely true to his word in his work here. You can see that there are details and lines moving, but similar to watercolor as opposed to a medium like acrylic. There is no stillness, it's fluid. The past few works I've shown you on this wall have all been primarily acrylic. And when you think about the difference between acrylic paint versus watercolor, your control is a lot less. It's a lot less because you make the mark and it bleeds. That's what water does on paper. It runs, it bleeds, and that's actually the goal. But when you think about that, you're almost giving up your freedom to control what happens on the canvas. So balance has to almost happen as an accident because you cannot control it in the same way as you can with a photograph or with a different medium like oil and acrylic. Speaking of photographs, I've got a photograph here from Athena Taziopoulos. If I said that wrong, Athena, please let me know. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. But something that's really strong about this photograph is it's a reflected image. So it is very intentionally balanced. She has taken an image, she has split it in half, and she has mirrored it on the other side. Everything you can see lines up as it is perfectly symmetrical. But something that I find so fascinating about a piece like this, in a similar way to Michael Ellenbogen's photograph from the previous art wall, is this had to be captured at the right moment in order to explore the kind of balance she was looking to achieve in this image. If you were to take this same image 20 seconds later, 20 minutes later, it would be a different story. I'd like to share with you her quote about balance. She says, "For me, a balanced composition is all about finding the formula with the minimum elements needed to create a visually dynamic piece." She's got her image floating in a frame, and it really brings a lot of stillness to this piece. The final work that I'm going to talk about today in particular and highlight is right here. It's titled Magnetic Field by Katrin Waite. Something that struck me thinking about Katrin's work and about this piece in particular is it's originally not the piece I was going to talk about to highlight balance. I was going to talk about one of her more symmetrical pieces, something that really explored compositional balance on the canvas. But to me, this one challenges the idea of balance because, similar to Carolina Ellenbogen's piece, it's a snapshot of a larger picture. It's a zoomed in, maybe or blown up image of what's going on around it. And she's telling us that because she's using similar colors to coat the edges of the canvas itself. So the canvas is one. This almost becomes a repeated pattern. And in a similar way to Carolina's piece, it's not actually a pattern, it's not actually evenly distributed, and it's not actually repeated in the same way. But that's the overwhelming effect. Balance is seeping through because our minds almost want to put it there. So in that way, we're achieving balance, we're understanding balance, despite the fact that it might not even be there. I'd like to just do a little check-in on Facebook and see if anyone has any comments or questions. Okay, let's see. So we've got a few comments and questions. Thank you guys for all of the congratulatory messages. I really appreciate that. We're working with what we've got right now. So, Reg Darling commented, "The boundary between abstraction and representation is porous and mutable. I'm losing it. There's another kind of balance found in the interchange at that boundary." I think that's a strong point, Reg, and I think that when I look at your work in particular, and when I look at your work in the context of this show, to someone external who had no idea what the concept was, what the theme was, even what the title was, you might say, how can this piece fit in? I don't understand. And the whole reason works were chosen for the show was because individually they exemplify or they explore balance as seen through the brushstroke or through the materials used by the creator. Let's see. It's kind of funny. I'm watching myself do this, but it's not letting me. Okay, there we go. Okay. So another comment was, can you talk about your process of curating balancing act? So you're in a situation now where normal life took a little break. We're not able to do the things we normally could do. So in these challenging times, it's kind of funny because the concept for balancing act actually came about before this whole pandemic really got big. And it's funny because balancing act actually seems quite appropriate for these times. The concept, the idea of exploring balance in daily life, exploring balance in our relationship with things we observe, and the idea of maintaining balance is something we're all kind of trying to do right now. You know, within limitations, obviously, and our daily lives have been disrupted, but we're trying to find again that balance we once had. And that's what I'm trying to do with this show here. I'm trying to group together works that seem a little bit all over the place, and I'm saying, okay, they might, from first glance, be a bit strange that they're all on the wall together. But take a step back and start to think about the balanced elements within all of these works, the sculptures, the photographs, the paintings, the works on wood. There's a variety of work happening. I'm seeing that Longina would like some close-ups, so maybe we'll do a little bit of a closer scan over some of the works. Guys, there are 28 works in this show. There might be 27 actually, but there are lots of works that I wasn't able to touch on today for this live video, but I would encourage all of you to, if it's possible, come do a little drive-by, come get out. You know, we had a few people joining us from the sidewalk today actually while I was doing my live video, and definitely check us out on the website ellenbogengallery.art. We've got the digital catalog published on the website, which has details for all these works, which has a little bit more insight to my viewpoint, to what I was trying to accomplish, some details on particular artists, details about the gallery. So please, you know, check us out online, stay up to date with what's going on with the show. It's going to be open for a while. Regardless of what happens with opening up, this show is available to viewers really at any time of the day, even if the gallery itself is not, it doesn't matter, but check us out online, ellenbogengallery.art. Send us a note, message us on Instagram or on Facebook if you have any questions, if you'd like to see detailed images, high-res images of any of these works, if you have any questions about the show itself, about me, about the gallery, let us know. So thanks for joining us today, and hopefully see you soon.